Here's the question. How do you make the impossible possible? Simple. Remove the I am, the ego. Now, how do you step into that newfound possibility? With a series of small intentional steps. Never forget, the greatest among us started from humble beginnings. But to truly unlock your potential, realize you're here for something greater. If you're yearning for more than just a good life, let's take that small step together to reach greatness. Welcome to the Greatness from Small Beginnings podcast, where we're talking to those who have gone from mediocrity to motivated, overlooked to overachieving, forgettable to unforgettable. Are you ready? Let's go. Well, hello, everybody. Happy Monday morning. I believe you're listening to me on Monday, or maybe it's a replay and it's some other day of the week. Welcome to Greatness from Small Beginnings. We're going to talk about a road to greatness here, as we always do. And I am excited about this one, only because I'm going to go on a bit of a rant, because I'm kind of mad about a couple of things. I know some people that are doing it a little wrong, and I can't seem to figure out a way to influence, to help, to encourage, to convince that this is the wrong way to think, be, and then do. It's about thinking wrong. It's about awareness that is off, that has no action behind it, that rights the awareness of something a little bit negative. Anyway, going on a rant, but I'm going to give some homage to a great man first. 5 truths from a legend. His name is Thomas Sowell. He's about 95 years old, and he may well be the greatest, America's greatest living intellect. He's seen a lot of things. He's a black man and has seen things that there's no way I could have seen. Part of the reason that his perspective comes from, which, man, do I appreciate that. Born in North Carolina, but raised in Harlem. Dr. Sowell is a Marine veteran. He earned an undergraduate degree in economics from Harvard in 1958, master's from Columbia, 1959. That was fast, a year, wow. And then a PhD, it doesn't date it, from University of Chicago. For the last 45 years plus, he's been at Stanford University Hoover Institute, where he's currently the Rose and Milton Friedman Fellow, a senior fellow, whatever that means. I'm not in that high academic situation. But here's another fun fact about him. He's written dozens of books, but is well known. The ones that I've previewed, seen the titles of, are books a lot about how twisted the social and racial justice world is. The typical sense of it is just a little bit off, and he sees it differently, and in a very wholesome, whole way, which is good. Anyway, it also says about him, a master communicator. Sowell has served as a prominent voice for common sense economics, relaying truths that apply not only to business and government, but also to life. And this is what this is. This is what this has got in it. The 5 truths from a legend. 1, when you want to help people, tell them the truth. I'm not always good at this, and I'll explain why in a minute. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear, or what you think they want to hear. And man, is that the way it is around me in several cases. Walk away from situations and say, okay, there were certain things said and not said in that conversation that it was like, okay, I don't feel manipulated, but I know that the person on the other end wanted something or needed something, and I was not getting the whole story. And that is frustrating. Let me put this into a generational. So I'm 62, and a generational complaint that young people in their 20s, early 20s, if you can get them talking, they'll be truthful and they'll say whatever comes to mind, as it almost doesn't matter how immature and unthought out it is, but it's said with zeal and it said it assuming that it's most of the truth, if not all of it. And it's interesting to me to have these conversations. And of course, I'll push back a little, and most of my old guy words fall flat with many of the younger 20 somethings. But I will tell you, those around 40 and a little older, 40 to 45, sometimes a little older, sometimes a little younger, are the group that I hear more often than anybody saying to me, because I actually know a lot of them, in particular in my industry. They say things that they want me to hear, and not, they don't tell the truth necessarily. They don't tell the whole truth. They don't say their opinion. Maybe it's because I'm older and they honor that and they don't want to hurt my feelings, but I will tell you that it's frustrating to me that I don't get the from many 40 somethings. They don't tell me the truth. They just don't say it. And I think it has to do with this statement right here where it says, if you want to help yourself, tell them what they want to hear or what you think they want to hear. And I really believe that in the generation right below me, which would be, people 45, 50, and then younger than that even, that people are really fairly selfish. And I've noticed that in light of a group at church. It was a group of mostly young families, and I will tell you that as a group, they here's how I would describe selfishness in that age group: that they want to do well by their family. And so they get in these rhythms and patterns, which is okay. Nothing wrong with rhythms and patterns. But they get in the rhythms and patterns, and then they want a group. And so they went to somebody at the church about my age, a little bit older, and said, we want to do a group with our age group so that we can encourage each other and be around each other. And then this guy's like, yeah, that sounds fun. I'd love to be in your lives and all this. And he engaged with my wife and I and several other people about the same age and said, we want to lead this together. And so that it's not a big burden on any one couple, and the young people want to engage, and it sounds great. But then what happened is they started this group and with the desire, well, what do you want to do? Well, we don't necessarily want to meet at church. Okay, so we do a separate meeting. Okay, what night would be good? What day would be good? So not weekends. We don't want to give weekends away. And I get that. I really do. I protect them myself. But well, let's do every other Friday night. Okay, no problem. And then after about 2 years, where attendance was poor because somebody in the family's sick, or I'm sorry that the starting at 6:30 just makes it too late. When we're done at 8, I'm not home till 8:30, and my kid has to be in bed at 7:30, or it just ruins our whole family. And I think about the age group of me and my friends, and we didn't worry about any of that. And we were just way more flexible on doing life as a community. And so to this day, I could get on my phone right here and I could call 20 different men. And they literally, if I said I needed something, they would come to my house in the middle of the night and wouldn't even ask why. If I said, I need you here, could you come? The answer would be yes. Give me a half hour, give me an hour, give me whatever. And they would come in the middle of the night. If I could wake them up to get them on the phone, they would come. And I feel like these 40 somethings with kids, 30, mid to late 30s, and then into 40s with kids, they just aren't that way. There's a lot of selfish there. And that's a little bit of a generational thing that doesn't go for everybody, but it's just something I noticed in a particular group. And now they're pared all the way back to they do a little bit more committed meeting in theory on one Friday a month, which the reason for 2 Fridays a month is that they were at least together. If they missed one, they're at least together once a month. And now if you miss one, you don't see people for at least 2 months. And that's not the way to build community. So there's me being ranting on that subject. So that was number one. Let me read it again. When you want to help people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. Okay. I just identified an age group, and goes for construction. This goes but that age group. I have been on the phone. I've talked in person with many of them, and honestly, there's not an honesty, and I think that it tends to be more that way, and not a humble honesty. I'll put it that way. In my age group, we did tend to be more honest. We were all broke together. We were all broke and raising kids on nothing, and we needed each other really bad. And maybe that's part of the difference is that from just a money expectation standpoint, maybe that age group doesn't have the same needs we had. So maybe I need to right my thinking on that part of it. Number two, people who pride themselves on their complexity and deride others for being simplistic should realize that the truth is often not very complicated. What gets complex is evading the truth. Man, I've got people around me that make things so complicated. And I say, why? Why are you making this complicated? Ask a couple clarifying questions if I'm not being clear. Or just tell me, could you start over? I wasn't clear what you just said. But I'm trying to simplify and they're making it complicated. And then everything in their head seems to be complicated and comes out like they just want to impress everybody. And I say, no, I don't want to be impressed. I want to be on a team. I want to be on the same team here. And just because I simplify doesn't mean I'm stupid. Do not get the idea that I have not thought deeply about this, but that I've chosen, instead of going complex, to simplify. So again, an older person thing, I just boil everything down to two or three main points. And that's what I live by, is those two or three main value points or important, significant points. Okay, I'll read number two again. People who pride themselves on their complexity and deride others for being simplistic should realize that the truth is often not very complicated. What gets complex is evading the truth. Man, is that true in my world and in yours. Rant number three. It is hard to imagine a more stupid or more dangerous way to make decisions than by putting those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. I have made this mistake of being the person that didn't hold accountable those in my life that I said, I'm going to pass this to you. It's important to me. I'm going to pass this to you. And then did not hold them responsible for the cost of making the wrong decision. Yes, they felt the cost, but that was not part of the transaction. And I think that often I did a poor job. I can think of three right now. I can't say them on this platform, but I think of three right now where I didn't actually say, okay, here's what this is going to be. Okay, I'm loaning you some money in some cases. I'm going to loaning you some money, and this is going to be the way this gets taken care of. This is the payback. And I didn't do part of number one. I didn't tell them the truth and then get it in writing. And that is completely on me for messing that up. So I'll repeat number three. It's hard to imagine a more stupid or more dangerous way of making decisions than by putting those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. And it's not that they made bad decisions. It's them being wrong. And some people around me are often wrong. And I haven't held their feet to the fire and say, no, I'm going to take this decision from you and I'm going to make the decision because you have the wrong thinking, the wrong being, and the wrong doing, eventually the wrong doing. And that's not fair to leave them in that position. Number four, we'll call it rant number four. Thank you to Thomas Sowell for these. The big divide in this country is not between Democrats and Republicans or men and women or other things. It's between talkers and doers. And what I mean by that is that somebody could be an action person and go get stuff done by pulling other people in, and yes, and even delegating and that kind of thing. But that's not necessarily a doer. A doer is somebody that sees it through, has a vision, has a dream, doesn't necessarily mean that they have to get into the nuts and bolts and get into the weeds on every single step in the process, but they are part of it and they're taking responsibility. And around me are people that are they're talkers, and we're going to dream this, we're going to do this, and then they set people loose without good systems and processes, and without holding uh, accountable through those systems and processes, and then holding themselves to it. Let those be good people set the system. How is this going to work? Let's figure it out together and then follow it. And man, there's people around me that don't follow it. And it makes me so mad. And then I turn back right around and I'm not truthful about it and say, listen, there's a process to this. Do the process or you're going to fail. And I just don't do that very well. I have this, what I've come up in my mind with this term called deficiency. I have a deficiency because of kindness. I go through the fruits of the Spirit, and there's 8 things. One of them is kindness, one of them is gentleness, and I am both of those things. But kindness just pours out of my heart, and I just want to trust people and let them move forward in life and do great things. And yet I'm not really great at, unless the data says you made the wrong decision, holding your feet to the fire. And I need to do that better. I have improvement in these things. Let me read number 4 again. The big divide in this country is not between Democrats and Republicans or women and men, but between talkers and doers. Again, that's not just because someone doesn't ever do anything. You can be a person of action, but if you delegate all of it and say, okay, I'm moving to the next thing, you guys fix it, without putting good systems and processes in place and training and caring enough to watch what's going on with your dream, then you're failing. You're failing others, and don't do that to them. All right. Number 5, it doesn't matter how smart you are unless you stop and think. So I've said this a couple of times in this podcast already, is how do I get to the best doing that I can do? Well, there's a process, a thinking and then a being. So when you think, then you become something out of that thought. Some people skip the being and they go right from thinking to the action of the doing. And I believe they've skipped character completely. I've been reading first part of Daniel in the Bible, and it talks immensely about that man's character and the people that were with him, and he protected them, they protected him, and they held their ground on certain things, and it really mattered, and God saved their lives. God didn't have to save their life. He still would have been faithful to them had he not done that. But he did save their lives. And it's an amazing story. You should read it, the first few chapters of Daniel and the character. Anyway, let me read number 5 again. It doesn't matter how smart you are unless you stop and think. So, information is something we have all over the place. Anytime we want it, anywhere we want it, we can get information about everything and anything. And AI has made it even more simple. And then we can structure the information into the best possible way of saying it based on thousands of algorithms and other ways that it puts it together. And I'm impressed with it, to be honest. I use it for Bible study and a lot of other things, putting documents together, and it is really handy. It is. But all of that smarts, all of that mental help that you can get from all of that AI and the internet and everything else, it doesn't help you unless you stop and think, is this the right thing? Is this helping me become the character, the person of character that I'm supposed to be? If you miss that, you've missed everything. By the time you do, you have already failed, because you have not seen people. You've not put the end results into motion. The current results into motion that will get the end result. You think you know what it is, but if you're doing it without the character and without taking into account others' character and others people's involvement in the being, like what does your team need to be before they go and do? We have to learn that through action. So granted, we have to do actions, but it's our job to teach the thinking and being part of those that are around us, especially as leaders. That being said, I think I'm going to end right there. I had something else going to say about John Wooden, and I'll get to that probably next time. But I love that man because he's so philosophical and yet so simple. Talk about simplistic. Number two, people who pride themselves on their complexity and deride others for being simplistic should realize that the truth is often not very complicated. What gets complex is evading the truth. And that's the way John Wooden, that's what his character revealed. And how he taught his basketball players and anybody that would listen. That's how he taught them, was humbly and simply take a complex thing and boil it down into something simple so that those around you can understand it. And it literally is simple. It's just some steps. All right. So I always end with this wonderful phrase from one of my favorite people. Get on Instagram. There was just a video in the last couple of days that had this one where I read it. I believe on one of these podcasts, but I finish almost every almost every podcast with it. And so here we go. Zig Ziglar. You were designed for accomplishment, engineered for success, and endowed with the seeds of greatness. I hope you saw today how these five, what did we call them? Truths from a legend. These 5 truths where I just kind of went off and it went on a rant. These 5 truths can get us to that greatness that you're supposed to be. And it really is designed to be something that comes through thinking. And then it's a development of character in the process. Understanding is not the whole thing. An outworking of understanding plus thinking deeply on it becomes wisdom. And then researching and finding out what others are saying about it. Reading the Bible. The greatest wisdom book in the world is the Bible. Go get it. Okay. You were designed for accomplishment, engineered for success, and endowed with the seeds of greatness. Now go be great.